Hello guys, welcome back to my channel. It is G here. I know I've been gone for a minute, but I am ready to finally share my notes on Charlie Kirk and us watching two branches of white supremacists have a quiet civil war. Guys, if you have not already, subscribe to my channel and let's get into my notes. Charlie Kirk is dead. And regardless of how you feel about that, what has been exposed is not only the underbelly of some of the white supremacist branches or factions or whatever they're called. One thing is that how consumerist culture has basically helped put us all in the right-wing pipeline. I know, you didn't even know you were there, but we have been there. They have stolen everything, packaged it up, and made it sellable. A lot of times we just ignore the fact that there's so much deviance within this culture that we don't see it anymore. Since I've been learning about it, I have gone down this rabbit hole, and what I have realized is that the people in charge, the white supremacists at charge, are waging a quiet civil war on this other faction. And we haven't noticed because there's so many human rights violations that have been going on. But when you look at how they talk about certain things, particularly the trans issue,
administration is working on to protect children from transgender ideologies in schools.
I also signed an order to cut off all taxpayer funding to any institution that engages in the sexual mutilation of our youth. And now I want Congress to pass a bill permanently banning and criminalizing sex changes on children and forever ending the lie that any child is trapped in the wrong body.
Which has come up now in the whole Groyper thing, right? The guy who murdered Charlie Kirk is a Groyper, right? His partner is trans or a femboy. I'm not sure how they identify because we only have really what's been played in the media, and we know how this group of people like to misgender people. So I have no idea, but we're now finding out more and more about the sexual expression of Groypers. And one of the things that we're learning as we're exploring these topics and everything is that Groypers recruit young boys, and they have these very particular ideologies around sexuality and dominance, right? So they take a lot of their cues from what they associate with the Roman Empire and the Roman culture and how they view sexuality. And it's very well known that Romans, you know, they had gay relationships, they had very particular relationships with men. This is how these Groypers are interpreting the Romans, right? Like, this is how they're interpreting the Romans. And so what I have discovered and what I've been taking some notes about is how in these online forums, these older Groypers, they recruit younger boys as young as like 10, 11 years old, and they start grooming them through games and memes and all of this sort of stuff. If they don't think these boys are going to fit into their Chad ideologies, then they try and feminize them, right? And when you listen to the white supremacists in charge right now, this is the kind of stuff that they talk about when they talk about trans.
There's a new conspiracy theory raging across the right.
The real conversion therapy that happens in our world today is the kind where a child is converted into LGBT.
The rest of us are like, what are you talking about? Like, those are not things that are happening because we are not looking necessarily at trans people in the way that they're looking at them in their white supremacist like groupings, right? So when these branches are breaking off and creating these ideologies that challenge their ideologies because they have their strict gender roles in, say, we'll just call them the Trump supremacists, right? Like, they have their strict gender roles versus the Groypers who, you know, they have femboys, they have Transmaxxing, they have like the furry thing. They have like this variation that they have broken off in respect to how they deal with their sexuality and their impulses as like the incels that made themselves into these other white supremacists, right? And this is where lack of culture actually comes in, right? It's particularly for white people because they take things, package it, and sell it. They don't have anything that really attaches to their culture. They gave up their culture a long, long time ago when they adapted whiteness as like their Lord and Savior. And that's another thing. Religion. How religion has also played a part into these ideas and ideologies of white supremacy. Ultimately, it seems like they're nihilists and they're waiting for the world to end in some way, and they want to bring it about. And that's how religion has twisted their minds, right? Because ultimately, their God, they're saved, right? They believe Jesus died for their sins, they're saved. Why do they have to do anything that has any sort of morality? Because ultimately, as well, white supremacists and whiteness has taught them that all of their bad and dirty deeds will be forgiven. And I think that is something that we don't address enough, and how that is a part of the insanity that has shaped our culture. So I've been reading this book, and I want to share a small snippet in this because it really like hits home to me, like what we have done and how we have shaped our culture and our society around the people and let them build a culture and society that has become a global impact. And this isn't just on Americans, by the way. These white supremacist groups and their ideologies and their factions are global. They have different groups across almost every country within Europe. So it is a symptom you can associate with whiteness. They all have different ideas around, sex and this, that, and the other, but particularly in the United States, where Puritanism and lack of sexual openness has become a huge thing for so long, and not talking about sex and even heterosexual sex, right? Like all of that. Whereas in other countries, that's not as astringent of a thing. However, they have very different cultures. The sexual part aside, when we start talking about how culture has been shaped and who has shaped our culture, we start to look at, we've let some crazy motherfuckers take control for a really long time. So I'm reading this book, The Falsification of African Consciousness, Eurocentric History, Psychiatry, and Politics of White Supremacy by Amos Wilson. Insanity as a model of sanity. The most insane people on earth today are used as models for sanity. The sanity of the racist European itself is not questioned. The insanity of European normality is not questioned. The possibility that what we call normal is itself insane is not questioned. The organization of this society, the nature of its human relations, the structure of its economic systems, the values that motivate it are the result of the madness of a people. This, like that, all by itself explains exactly why we are where we are. We have let madness develop the society, and we think we're not involved in that. We will quote our forefathers, right? In the United States, we do like this, our forefathers they have their idea of what forefathers would have wanted, and other people have their ideas of forefathers, what they would have wanted, right? Even those who hold them in higher regard, like on the left, you might talk about how they wanted the separation of church and state, and how eventually they started to understand, like, this, that, and the other. They were human traffickers, right? They were human traffickers. Most of them were pedophiles. And what's changed about today? Since the birth of the nation and the death of a previous nation, we have adapted insanity as sanity, and we don't question it. And we don't question it because whiteness. period. They have created this idea. There's no studies being brought about young, disenfranchised, maladapted white boys, because the basis of almost the entire world is adapted to white boys. How could they be maladapted to a society that was built to have them? And that's where MAGA comes in. When you start thinking about make America great again, that's what they want. And that's why they're trying to get these other factions of white supremacists together, right? They're trying to make it a world where, okay, you know what? White men are supposed to have everything that they want. And there was a period in time that white men had everything that they want, and that's the period of time that they are trying to get back to. And they're trying to get these other white boys under that umbrella again, because they have splintered off from lack of culture, from lack of connectivity, from being insane. From being insane in an insane world, and nobody actually is doing anything about it. Because you can't say that just individuals are sick, right, anymore. You can't say that if all of this stuff is happening in our society and the sickness is greater than anything else, then society is sick. The entire society is sick. And nobody ever looks at whiteness and says, oh, they're all sick, mentally maladapted people, because this world tried to adapt everything to them, and now it's not working anymore. It hasn't been working. So Make America Great Again is creating rules and structures to try and get these white boys things that they think will get them back in line, right? So what is that? That's women, power and control over women. And when you start to break down, we talk about like, oh, they're after trans people because it challenges the binary rules. They're after gay people because it challenges the binary rules. They're trying to force women to have children because of population decline. They are trying to get white men to feel like they have power again. And these little boys who are growing up in this place where they watch their parents be maladapted and insane, right? And they watch them to do terrible things, and they are terrible people, and nothing happens. Everything's good because God said so. They have this right because God said so. And so eventually it's creating a whole new group of mental illness and madness and insanity within white culture that has been going unchecked for a while. After Charlie Kirk was murdered, what happened? White people turned ravage. They started calling HBCUs, making bomb threats. They immediately started to focus on Black people, minorities in the country, immigrants. They wanted it to be something that they could point out and say, look, it was them all along and we're just responding and reacting. But they couldn't, and they knew. I mean, what kind of insanity looks around at everything that happens all the time in the United States, particularly murders that happen like this, and it's very rarely, if ever, someone of color or immigrant. It's rarely them. But they, in the insanity and madness that our society is, could somehow justify and not even consider the reality that we all live in. They live there too. Somewhere deep in their consciousness, they had to know that the likelihood, based on statistics, based on all of the reasoning, that this was not going to be anyone else but one of them. I mean, the governor of Utah, the call out that he made, the disappointment that he had, was not about the person who ruined someone's life or, took a father away. He was like, I really was praying. He was praying. What kind of prayers do these people have? He was praying it wouldn't be. He knew. He already knew. That's why he opened that prayer up. He knew it was going to be a cis-het looking white boy or person. I mean, he knew that. They wanted it to be anyone but them. And meanwhile, the same cis-het boys were shooting people in other parts of the country. And they've been doing it for decades. But when has it truly been a problem? When has when has this become, when have they said this is a cultural problem within whiteness that we need to address? Ultimately, they don't. And we know they don't, because they believe, they believe that the madness that they have created is normal. I mean, so normal that all of us, all the rest of us can be like, oh, we know it's who did that. You know, we can say we know what group of person or what demographic of person did that. We all know. But we had to play along in their insanity. And the fact that people are not playing along in their insanity is making them mad. It's making people lose their jobs, lose their platforms, lose this, lose that. And that's what they're trying to make normal. Again, having the double standard for one group versus another is what is normal to them, right? And acting outside of that, not accepting that, is abnormal. And so they're punishing the abnormalities. Even the guy who is accused of allegedly confessed whatever, you know, to this crime, his parents are going to get the reward for turning him in. So they get $1 million or whatever it is for turning in their son. And it's very likely that this boy is not going to get the same harsh treatment. Like, they were calling for the death penalty before they found this boy, who is a European American boy, cis-het looking kid. Like, before they found him, they were calling for the death penalty. Now it's like, well, we all make mistakes. The language is softened. We haven't seen his image as much across the world, and trying to understand this conversation has been one that, again, is on the sidelines. And it's never going to be in the main focus, because everyone is fighting for the right to survive right now. Everyone is fighting for the right to just, you know, breathe right now. And they want it like that because they keep deconstructing everything to try and rebuild this power. The administration in the United States are pointed at breaking down so many rights and civil rights is ultimately for one goal. It's to get these white boys back in the idea and the insanity that they feel like they can control. Because right now, what religion has twisted them into, believing that they can do anything that they want. And ultimately, it doesn't matter, because you know what? God, they're white, they're going to go to heaven, they're saved, all of the things that have happened need to happen, they got baptized, and now it doesn't matter. And the hypocrisy of the government, their parents, the brutality that is constantly around them has shaped them into people who've like, well, I'm still doing all right. And these are well-off kids, right? These are not the poor white boys. These are children with privilege. And to have this type of time on your hands, to have this ability to do these things, requires privilege, requires money that most average kids in the United States don't even have. But it confuses people even more. How could this boy with two parents in the home, you know, they go to church every Sunday, his father's a Trumper, you know, how could this happen to them? Well, because we've made insanity completely normal. Because when it looks white, it's okay. And that has been something that has been repeated. And then when you add the layer of consumerism on top of it, the fact that most of us, you know, these memes and these like little slogans they come up with, that are associated and taken from other aspects of cultures, from the Vikings and Valhalla, the Roman Empire. These little things that they take and we all make fun of. We all think it's funny and it's a joke, or we'll buy a t-shirt that has the OWO on it, not knowing what it means. Maybe it's just an owl. It's kind of cute. Like, you could see someone on the other side purchasing these kind of items, supporting supremacist culture without even knowing it, because everything is meant for consumerism. And if it's cute and catchy or ironic, then people do it. So we all have been in this pipeline of acceptance of some sort of right-wingedness thing, because our forefathers built it into the culture with fascism at the very beginning. And this is global, right? We talk about fascists now, but to a certain extent, we've already been fascists, because we've had slavery, we've had these Jim Crow laws. The fascism never really ended, because it never took accountability. And it's the same thing in other countries. I mean, I see it here in Italy as well. It never ended because no one ever took accountability to remove it, like, and rebuild the system so that it was equal and fair. Nobody has done any of those things. So we talk in circles around these ideas because what's normal is insane, because mad people built it. They built a system of madness, and we've all just been running around inside of it. Whether we're mad or not, it will take you there at some point in time. You cannot, live in a clown house without eventually deciding, well, maybe the makeup, I might not go full clown, but you might, put on some floppy shoes and think, all right, well, that's enough to at least make me feel like what's insane is not as crazy as it is. The thing that we don't look at from whiteness is the family structure and the social structures that made these people. We only seem to look at Black communities and Black culture in the sense of how, systematic things have affected and shaped the reactions of Black people in the United States. When the system is meant to support you, there is nothing that they feel like they need to look at. But even though the system was ultimately built for them, it was built in madness. And while Black people in the United States and almost every other minority group in the United States has been fighting against madness, fighting for their own sanity in a mad world, they have been coming out better because they can see the madness and they can stay away from it. And they can see the cultural appropriation. They see the things that have been stolen. Where when you're a thief and you believe that everything is rightfully yours, or you have a right to take the things that you take, you don't feel the same way. You become apathetic about anyone else's pain, and believing that ultimately everything you do is okay and right. There's no insanity associated with you. Insanity is always associated with other people. It's always associated with other crimes. It's always associated with other skin tones than yours. Then why do you ever have any sort of checks and balances, especially when you have no culture of your own to challenge you? There are no rites of passage for most white boys. And when there are, they're usually violent ones or aggressive ones against women, or like, you know what I mean? Like in Latin culture, you might have a quinceañera, girls suffer a little less because we have, and I think also white women, they suffer a little less in this respect because we have certain biological things that are rites of passage and things that are associated with womanhood, right? That we all can connect to, that makes things a little different for women. Whereas boys, we've not created those same kind of things. Most boys don't have a sweet 16 or They're not celebrated to have like certain aspects in white culture that are particularly attached to them. You know, if you're Jewish, you might have your bar mitzvah. Like there's all kinds of things that attach people to community. And white people are not as attached to community because of their individualism. And that obviously is something that whiteness did not really fulfill in them, and has not replaced that cultural aspect needed for actual morality and shaping how you are human and how you deal with humanity. Instead, the humanity that is built within whiteness is simply madness. Guys, if you have not already, subscribed to my channel. I am G. This is Notes from the Margins, where I try and talk about what is happening in our society globally. I live in Italy and I see lots of connections about what happens in our world from a global perspective, and I want to share my notes with you. So guys, subscribe to my channel, and ciao ciao for now.